Did Michael have something to do with that? Did you kill your grandfather, Michael? Bro, that's not cool. That's not cool. Rich people have problems. Like, what is wrong with y'all? What are y'all doing? Hello, beautiful people. Thank you so much for clicking to watch this video. My name is Cydnee, and today we're doing a makeup in history. Keep switching it up on you guys. I gotta keep it exciting. If you're new here, Makeup in History is a series on my channel where I put on makeup while talking about a historical event, a scandal from the past, or just a person story I find fascinating. Today's video topic is going to be about Armie Hammer, okay? Buckle up. For those of you who aren't familiar, Armie Hammer is an American actor and what I would call a handsome devil, okay? He is evil, allegedly. So that's where we're gonna go back in time and look at today. We're gonna be focusing specifically on Armand Hammer, Armie's great-grandfather, who he's named after. So Armie is short for Armand. And Armand Hammer is the actual devil, okay? Just devil, not handsome, just devil. Evil. Allegedly. It's a hot mess. It is a steaming hot mess. And I am astonished that they've been able to get away with all of the things that they've been able to get away with for so long. It's ridiculous. Preposterous, actually. If you haven't already and you would like to, please subscribe to my channel. Join the family. Turn on the notification bell so you're notified every time I upload a new video. I'm getting a lot better at being consistent, aren't I? Go me. You can also follow me on other platforms. My name is Cydnee everywhere if you feel compelled to. You know, do your thing. Do what you want to do. I support that. Yeah, okay. Enough babbling. Let's put on some makeup and get into this story. Okay, so all the products and everything that I'm using will be listed down in the description box below if you're ever curious. I also include sources for where I find my information. The bulk of information from this video is coming from the documentary that just came out on Discovery Plus called House of Hammer. Hot mess, you guys. Hot mess. Breaking out really badly. I don't know what that is about. Very upsetting. All right, so where do we begin? With the allegations, I guess. 2021, multiple women come out claiming that they had been abused by Armie Hammer. A lot of the women claimed that they had been in a romantic relationship with him. He just recently announced that he was splitting up with his wife, who he'd been with for 10 years. And so he was dating again, just getting back out there, but not in a good way. Armie was using psychological manipulation in order to emotionally entrap women and then get them to agree to do things that they normally would not do, that they did not want to do. And he was calling it BDSM. For those of you who don't actually know exactly what BDSM is, same. I had to look it up as well. Apparently a lot of people don't know what it is. We've all heard the term, but like not a lot of people truly understand it. And Armie was choosing women who didn't know what it actually was so that he could take advantage of them. So basically BDSM is an umbrella term for various sexual activities. The acronym BDSM stands for bondage, discipline, submission, sadism, and masochism, and dominance. Bondage, discipline, dominance, submission, sadism, masochism. A lot going on in there. A lot going on in there, but no judgments. Hey, you do what you gotta do, okay? But it should be done consensually though, and that's not what Armie was doing. Armie was using psychological manipulation, love bombing, being so charming, being so adoring, and then like turning cold and becoming distant to convince these women that they wanted to do the stuff that he was doing to them. And it wasn't like chill stuff. Like he was tying them up for hours and doing whatever he wanted while they were completely helpless. Like they could not move in the bondage that he was using. He carved his initials on one of the women while she was tied up and couldn't do anything about it. He carved an A in the side of her and then started like licking the blood, like weird things. What's even worse for the women involved in all of this was all of it was done under the idea that they had consented to it when they actually didn't. And that's the crazy thing about psychological manipulation, you guys. I'm gonna do a whole video on that because you guys have already asked me regarding the Robert Freegard case. It's actually crazy how easy it is to get inside someone's psyche and control them, like control what they think and feel, what they do, especially when you're using love. And that's what Armie was doing. And then afterwards, they'd have a lot of guilt and shame about what had happened, but it's hard to confront that because it's like, oh, well, I did say it was okay, and this is my boyfriend and I want to make him happy, so I guess it's okay, but it's not okay. It's actually not okay. He needs to be put away, in my opinion, in my personal opinion. Lock him up. One of his girlfriends, he said he wanted to find a doctor that could remove her ribs so that he could smoke it and eat it. Like, even if he was kidding, what? I'm sorry? He wasn't kidding though. She says she fully thought he was serious about it because he would say things like that all the time. He would brag about how evil the men in his family were, and like he was proud of that. He was proud that the men in his family were evil. But he wasn't wrong. They are evil, especially his great-great-grandfather, Armand Hammer. So to start this story, we're gonna get in our time machine and we need to go back to like 1919, okay, 1920, maybe. Put your seatbelt on. We made it. We're here. We're in the year 1919. In the year 1919, Julius Hammer was a Russian doctor working in New York City. And the tea was that he was the leader of the Communist Party in the US. His family had very close ties to the Soviet Union. Julius had 2 sons, one of them named Armand Hammer. And apparently he came up with that name as a gesture to the communist flag, Armand Hammer, because there's an arm and a hammer in the flag, I guess. I don't know. Armand was a lot like his father. He grew up and wanted to be a doctor. And in the year 1919, he was studying at Columbia Medical School, getting his degree. He also really wanted to be a businessman. So on top of going to school and getting his medical degree, he also started a pharmaceutical business on the side. Little farmy farm. Little pharma. Now there's big pharma. He was starting little pharma. It's a bad joke. Moving on. So in the year 1920, Julius Hammer gets into some trouble when he gives an abortion to a Russian diplomat's wife, and a few days later she dies. Julius is convicted of first-degree manslaughter and he's thrown in jail. Armand, who is 22 at the time, decides rather than staying in the US and continuing his father's practice, his doctor practice, he's gonna go back to Russia and be with family, mend the connections there, and foster the relationships they had over there. Apparently, they had a pretty close relationship with Vladimir Lenin, and for those of you who don't know, he is the originator of the Soviet Union. Okay, he founded the Soviet Union Communist Party. He started it. Before Joseph Stalin, it was that guy, and they knew him personally, which is crazy. Armand stays in the Soviet Union for about 10 years. During that time, he gets married to a very famous opera singer there named Olga, and the two of them have a son together, which he called Julian. So his father's name is Julius, his son's name is Julian. Armand continues his dream of building a business. He really wanted to be a businessman more than anything. So along with working as a doctor in the Soviet Union, he started a pencil factory, and it was apparently very, very successful. His business was thriving, was doing really, really well, but because he was in the Soviet Union, he had to give a lot of it to the state, and he started to realize that if he really wanted to be a successful businessman, it wasn't going to happen in the Soviet Union. And so he decides he's going to pack up, leave everything behind, and go back to the US. And that's exactly what he does. He abandons Olga, he leaves Julian, like, sorry guys, nice knowing ya, and he moves to the US in the early 1930s to pursue business. Once Armand got back to the US, he did his best to really distance himself from the Soviet Union and truly try to be American and embrace everything that was American. Although he had a close relationship with the leader and starter of the Soviet Union, he was like, that's the old me, okay? I'm moving forward. Right? We're starting again. In 1943, Armand gets married again to a woman named Angela Zevly, who is also an opera singer, like his wife, in Russia. Man's had a thing for opera singers, eh? The marriage to Angela was short-lived, though. She divorced him, claiming that he was psychologically and physically abusive.
In her divorce testimony, she said that he willfully, maliciously, and deliberately pursued a course of conduct, employed techniques, tactics, and practices calculated and designed to destroy her will. He threatened her with serious bodily violence and injury and to beat her brains out while brandishing a metal pipe. I feared my husband. He is a master of psychological warfare.
So she was like, all right, I'm gonna head out. I'm gonna bounce. This is not working for me. Thank you. Armand continued relentlessly pursuing his dream of being a businessman. He went into various different ventures, he really didn't even care what the business was. He just wanted a business. So he's trying in all these industries and nothing's really working out. And then in 1953, he meets his new wife, Frances Beret. Frances was a wealthy widow, and once the two married, Armand used her money to purchase a small oil company called Occidental Oil or something like that. Occidental Petroleum is what it was called. It was a small, struggling oil company that he purchased for $100,000 or something. I don't know the numbers. Okay, we're not gonna get into the numbers, but he buys the company, and finally, he does well, something finally sticks, and he builds this company to be the 16th largest oil company in the world. So now he's rolling in the dough. Frances is chill. She's like, great, glad that worked out. They're very, very rich. They become billionaires during this time. Now, at some point between 1940 and 1950, Julian, Armand's son, moves to the US from Russia, and he's like, Dad, what the hell, Dad? Where have you been? And Armand, who has been working very, very hard to rid himself of his past image, confronts Julian and he's like, I don't know you. You say you're my son, but we're gonna have to give you a test. Knowing damn well that was his son. He knew damn well. They looked just alike, for one. But two, he knew that was his son. You named him Julian. Stop this. He makes Julian take a paternity test to verify that they are actually related. And when the test comes back positive, Armand is just kind of like, all right, whatever. Fine, but get out of my way. He pretty much ignores Julian. He gives him money and takes care of him financially, but he really just ignores him. He's like, don't mess up my image. Armand cared a lot about his reputation and his image. Julian would start acting out in ways to try and get his father's attention. He would do really crazy, stupid things. He was just the definition of a wealthy, stupid kid, except he was a grown-ass man. So Julian is out on vacation, spending his dad's money somewhere in Mexico, riding a motorcycle when he meets a woman named Glenna Sue. The two of them fall madly in love and get married. In 1955, they give birth to their first child, Michael Hammer, and shortly after that, their second child, Casey Hammer. Casey Hammer is the one who's coming forward now and revealing all of the deep, dark secrets of her family, all the things that she witnessed that have been covered up for decades because of the amount of money their grandfather had to shut it all away and protect his reputation. Casey Hammer is being very brave coming out with this information, and God protect her. Godspeed. Godspeed, lady. Yeah. So Casey Hammer says that growing up, her grandfather, Armand Hammer, acted as though he was God, and the rest of the family was very afraid of him. He would watch their every move. He listened to their phone calls. He would track their cars. He kept tabs on everyone in the family. He was surveying everyone in the family. In Casey's eyes, her grandfather was the most powerful man in the world. And one day, she remembers asking him, Grandpa, why don't you become president? And he responded to her, there's not enough power in being president. Casey says that her father, Julian, was very, very abusive to their family. She remembers that he would get belligerent drunk and beat her mother for hours. He would also abuse her and her brother Michael. He wasn't a family guy. Julian, kind of like his dad. At one point, Glenn goes to Armand and tells him, hey, your son is beating the crap out of me. I want to leave. I want out. And Armand tells her, well, you can't leave my son. If you leave my son, you divorce my son, that'll put shame on our name and I will ruin you. If you leave him, you'll get nothing. Okay, so work it out. This is unfortunately very common for women of that era. A lot of women in the early 70s and 60s could not leave their husbands, even if they had proof that they were physically abusing them. And in this case, she also had this oligarch, crazy creep man, grandpa, breathing down her neck, threatening to ruin her life if she decided to leave. So she really was trapped for many years. Eventually, things got so bad for Glenn that she decided to take her chances and leave anyway. She's like, whatever, fine. And Armand keeps his promise. He doesn't give her anything. I think she gets $200 for child support. She decides to leave anyway, and good for her, and she takes Casey with her, and Michael decides he wants to stay with his father. Casey says that watching what her mother had to go through and leaving her father and how she was treated, it made her internalize the idea that women were not important in the Hammer family. Women didn't matter, they didn't have value, and she felt that way her entire life growing up. Even worse was that when Casey would go to visit her dad and her brother, she observed them being complete womanizers. There was always all of these girls at the house, these young girls. Her dad was on drugs, he was drinking a lot and doing a lot of drugs, and Michael also started living the same lifestyle. To make matters even worse, even more evil and disgusting, Julian starts sexually abusing Casey, his daughter. Horrible, horrible, absolutely horrible. So Casey really did grow up with this complex that women were not as valuable in the family. After Glenn had left, Julian and Michael's relationship became very, very toxic. They were kind of like bros, like it was like a frat house there, but they hated each other. And Julian would do things like sleeping with Michael's girlfriend, who was a teenager. He would pick on his son a lot, he would bully his son, and it created a very resentful relationship between the two of them. They did not like each other at all. Kind of like how he hated his father, he made his son hate him. So, cycles. I'm saying, man, you gotta start doing right, making good choices, because it just comes back around. It comes right on back around. Michael and Julian would get into fights a lot, all of the time, but never around Armand. Everyone was always on their best behavior whenever Armand was around, because he was like the family god, and they were all terrified of him, as they should be. He seemed like he was terrifying. Armand used his newfound wealth with the oil company to build very powerful connections. Apparently, he had been bribing very powerful men all over the world, but making the connections nonetheless. Like, it seemed as though he was friends with all of these men. The president of Argentina, all of the presidents in the US. He had JFK's personal number while he was the president. In 1972, Armand Hammer funded the Watergate scandal. So he's the guy who funded Nixon's debauchery. In the late 70s, Armand Hammer was prosecuted and found guilty for his involvement in the Watergate scandal, and this devastated him because it ruined his perfect reputation. He was now a criminal in the eyes of the US government, and he couldn't have that. So in an effort to gain his credibility back, he starts a relationship with Prince Charles. He goes over across the pond, starts giving Prince Charles all this money to do with whatever he wants, and like buying him all these lavish gifts and whatever to get on his good side. He and Charles become very close, and Armand throws a gala for Prince Charles and Princess Diana when they came to visit the US, and this was like a huge deal. Prince Charles and Armand apparently became so close that he wanted Armand Hammer to be Prince William's godfather. So when Prince William was born, he wanted him to be the godfather, but Diana was like, nah, I don't think so. Diana intercepted that one, and thank heavens. In 1989, when George Bush Sr. became president, he pardoned Armand Hammer for his involvement in the Watergate scandal. So his record was clean again. He was officially expunged of all criminal involvement. Like, that's absurd. It's actually absurd. He was friends with JFK. He was doing criminal activity with Richard Nixon, and then he gets pardoned by George Bush Sr. So we're clear, this is a terrible, horrible, awful human being, torturing his family behind closed doors. Abandoned his first family. Poor Olga. I don't even know. I hope Olga was all right. There isn't really much information about Armand's relationship with Frances, his third wife. I'm thinking he probably just had like psychological control over her. I don't really know, but like she doesn't say much or do much really at all. Like there's not very much information about her. I feel like he probably mastered the art by the time he got to his third wife. During their marriage, Armand had many mistresses. He had tons of women that he was cycling in and out of his life. And one of his main mistresses, a woman named Martha Kaufman, was a divorced woman with 2 kids. She apparently divorced her husband after she met Armand, and he and her had a very, very close relationship. Like he was taking care of her, basically. Frances finds out about his affair with Martha Kaufman, and apparently she was not happy about it because it was so public, I guess, like other people knew. And so she tells him, like, you need to get rid of her. You need to end things with her. But rather than cutting the affair off, he just has Martha legally change her name. He has her legally change her name and dye her hair. so that they could continue seeing each other and his wife Frances wouldn't know. What kind of level of psycho do you have to actually be to do this kind of, what the f? Armand has Martha change her name to Hillary Gibson, and they continue business as usual. He even puts her on the payroll at his oil company so that there was no suspicion about who she was. And Martha, now Hillary, was apparently completely under Armand's control. She drove a car that had a tracking device. He was surveying her house all the time, like he always knew where she was. And he would make her do really humiliating things for him, like over the phone, and record it and then like play it back for her, like torture or whatever, like blackmail her. I don't know. I was not there. I don't know. Really glad I wasn't there for this one, because what? Like, imagine giving someone complete control of your life. That is so crazy to me. What? All of the Hammer men were completely out of control. Armand is bribing politicians and cozying up with princes and psychologically abusing his wife. Julian killed his best friend. He shot his best friend over a gambling debt, and Armand just made the whole thing go away. And Michael, the youngest Hammer man at this time, was also leading down that same path. He was just reckless. According to sources, Julian was very intelligent, but he just lacked the drive and direction because his father abandoned him and ignored him and abused him. But Michael was not very smart. Like, people said he was not very smart at all, but he just swore he knew everything and like was the biggest, baddest guy in town. I don't know. Michael went to college to get his business degree, and apparently he wanted to take over the family business, but Armand was skeptical because he thought he was an idiot. Michael starts working with his grandfather at the oil company, just kind of learning the ropes. But again, like, Armand was just kind of like, whatever, like, you're a mess. Like, I can't leave my company to you. You're gonna ruin it. You're a mess. And Michael was a mess. He was partying all the time, doing drugs. He always had all these different girls around. He wasn't really taking school seriously or really anything seriously, but he did try to like put his best foot forward for his grandpa, you know, because he was scared of him. So Michael is drunk on a plane somewhere. Who knows where he was going, coming or going. But while he was on the plane, he meets a woman named Drew Ann Mobley, and both of them really, really liked each other and decided they wanted to get married. So Michael introduces Drew to his family, and at first, Casey's like, we just thought it was gonna be just another girl because he always had all these girls around, like, whatever. But it seemed as though he really, really liked her, and when he introduced Drew to Armand, his grandfather, Armand loved her. Drew was this very gracious Christian girl from Oklahoma. Her father was apparently a very powerful, very prominent member of the Christian church there. And even though Armand was Jewish, he saw this as an opportunity to really blend two powerful families. They were wealthy, he was wealthy, this was good. This was gonna be good. Finally, maybe a legacy that he could build because everyone else was a disappointment to him. So Armand was in full support of Michael marrying Drew. He thought, this is finally the woman who's gonna make him behave, straighten him up. He was wrong. In January of 1985, Michael and Drew officially tie the knot, they get married, and the following year, in 1986, they give birth to Armand Hammer II. They decide to name their first child after Michael's grandfather, Armand Hammer, but they'll call him Armie for short. A few years after that, they also give birth to a second son, Victor Hammer, but Armie was the golden kid. Everyone loved Armie. Armand especially loved Armie. He would always talk about how he was the future. This was his legacy. He was very, very proud of Armie. And this was kind of like a punch in the gut for Michael and especially Julian, because Armand was giving all of this loving attention to Armie, and he'd never given that to anyone else, literally anyone else. Michael continued working very closely with his grandfather in hopes of acquiring the business, and he did move up. Like, he moved up a lot in the company and started getting more and more power. December 1990, Casey gets a call from Michael saying that their grandfather has died. Armand is dead. Casey leaves to go to her grandfather's house upon hearing this news, and when she gets there, things are a little weird. Like, it's not, something ain't right. When Casey arrived to her grandfather's house, it seemed as though the police were also just arriving, which didn't really make sense. Like, she figured the police would have already been there, but no. Michael and Drew were the only ones there when Armand died. I guess they called the police probably after he called everyone else. I don't really know. I don't know. But when Casey pulls up to the house, Michael and Drew are like loading the car up with things that they want to take from Armand's house, like things that they thought were valuable. They're stealing, they're looting. They were looting his house. The body's barely cold, but they gotta get those valuables. Okay. After the death, they're reading the will. The family gets together to read the will, and they're pissed. First of all, they thought that when their grandfather died, he was a billionaire because he said he was a billionaire, right? Like he was very, very wealthy. They thought he had billions. Apparently it was only like 40 million that they were going to split up between them. So they were pissed about that already. To make matters worse, once the lawyers started reading the will, they find out that Julian was left $500,000. Casey was left $250,000. And the rest of it was given to Michael and Drew. Hillary, the mistress who he made legally change her name, was also at the reading of the will because Armand said that he was going to take care of her after he died and he was going to give her money after he died. He didn't leave her anything. He didn't leave her a cent. She changed her name for this man. He didn't leave her a cent. Evil. Casey and Julian were of course very, very upset because they got left with pretty much pennies compared to what Michael got, and they start investigating. Like they start looking into like what is going on. What they find is that Armand had changed his will just 40 days before his death so that Michael would get everything, but prior to that it was something different. 40 days before he died, he changed the will. And then I think it's a little fishy that the will is changed and then Michael is the only one there when he dies. Like they said he apparently died of cancer, but like, did Michael have something to do with it? Did you kill your grandfather, Michael? Bro, that's not cool. That's not cool. At Armand's funeral, apparently Drew's father, who again is a very powerful Christian man, don't know his name, don't really want to. He gets up at Armand's funeral and declares that Armand gave his life to Christ right before he died. So he's going to be buried as a Christian. And this was shocking to many people there because Armand was Jewish and he had lived his life as a Jewish man the entire time. So to find out that like now that he's gone, he's going to be Christian, that's fishy. It seems a little fishy. Shortly after inheriting the company, Michael sells it. All that hard work that his grandfather had fought for all those years, he sells it very shortly after he inherited it. And then he proceeds to dismantle any legacy that his grandfather built. So Armand would donate to art museums. He had a museum named after him. Michael got rid of all of that and he started donating all of the money that his grandfather left him to Christian organizations. And honestly, I wish I felt bad. Like, it's crazy. Okay, don't get me wrong, it's crazy. Rich people are crazy. But I don't feel bad because Armand was a terrible person. Like, he lived his life in a terrible way. He should not get to have a legacy that lives on in a good way. And that's very evident with Armie, but we're not there yet. In 1996, after getting rid of everything, Michael decides to move his family to the Cayman Islands. Michael allegedly never really grew up. He continued just being very immature, doing a lot of drugs, sleeping with a lot of women. This caused a big rift in his relationship with Armie, so he and Armie would get into fights a lot. The cycle continues. And then in 2017, Drew and Michael officially split up, which wasn't that long ago, honestly. 2017 was not that long ago, was it? No, it was like 5 years ago. They split up fairly recently, I guess. Maybe, I don't really know. Apparently there was another big scandal involving Michael in the early 2000s, like some art scandal. I didn't even get into that. Like, I can't. Reading about Armand was enough. I wonder if he did like have something to do with his grandfather's death though. Like, imagine, that'd be crazy. We would never know. But like, the will was changed 40 days before he died and Michael coincidentally gets everything. Crazy. Insanity. So it seems to me that Armie Hammer is just following in the footsteps of his forefathers, okay? Evil. His great-grandfather Armand was evil. His grandfather Julian was evil. His dad, Michael. I really wonder if he had something to do with Armand's death. Like, that's crazy. I wouldn't be shocked though. Apparently, along with the art scandal that he was involved with in the early 2000s, he was also under suspicion because he was portraying himself as this like Christian man, this changed Christian, I love Jesus man, but he had a sex dungeon and like a contraption that like looked like a torture device. When Michael was asked about what the contraption was, his lawyer said it was just a gift. It's a gag gift. It's a joke. Really? Because it doesn't look like a joke. Looks like maybe he probably tortures people in there, but like, What do I know? And I don't want to know. Honestly, I don't want to know. Julian passed away, I think, in the early 2000s. I'm not for certain what date he actually passed away, but he's no longer with us. So now there's just Armie and his father, Michael, who are continuing the debauchery. Just moving right along. So far, there are at least 4 people, 4 women who have come forward with claims that they were abused by Armie Hammer, and they have extensive amounts of proof. That seems to not really matter much to this family. I think that they've existed so long with no consequences. I feel Armie, he thinks that there's not going to be any consequences for his actions, and so far there hasn't been, other than his sullied reputation. His sullied reputation and his exceedingly high American Express bill. Like, pay your credit card bill, dude. What are you doing? Some people think that he's not guilty of anything at all. They think it's just kinky desires and that you know, the women consented to it, so it's fine. Like, I really am gonna do that video about psychological abuse and emotional manipulation as it relates to intimate partners, because it's a real thing. Like, emotional and psychological abuse are very, very powerful tools for abusers to use. And oftentimes when we think of domestic violence, we only look at physical abuse or sexual abuse, things that we can prove. We've only recently just started like looking at those things and actually doing something about that. But we don't look at psychological and emotional abuse. And according to social psychologists who study domestic violence, emotional and psychological abuse are the foundations of domestic violence. It usually doesn't get to physical, or it doesn't even have to get to physical for someone to be battered, to be considered a battered victim. Armie exhibits classic psychological manipulation tactics on all of the women who have come forward about him, which makes me think that they were coerced into doing these things. Like, it wasn't consensual the way that they thought it was. And it really doesn't help that he's so good looking. It really doesn't. God. Handsome devil. Evil. Alright, you guys, that's it for this video. I really had to condense everything to make it more not so crazy. Everything's allegedly. Allegedly. Thank you. Please check the description box if you're curious where I got my information, allegedly. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please be sure to like it, subscribe, watch some other videos, come hang out with me some more. Leave some suggestions down in the comment box of things you'd like to see from me. Really appreciate that too. Thank you. I've got to stop just saying thank you like that. It's weird. It's weird, but it's hilarious to me. I think it's so funny. Okay, you guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I'll see you in my next one. Bye!